everybody. I'm Paul.
I'm Jan.
And welcome to another episode of the Shadow-Caste.
Shadow-Caste.
Great name. So, Jan, you are leading the show on this one. So what do we got going on?
Yeah, I thought since we dug into J.D. Vance, I thought I'd also dig in a little bit to this Tim Walz guy, especially since they're just making him out to be just like the nicest guy you ever met. It reminds me of the marketing they did on George W. Bush. This is the guy you want to invite to dinner.
Wow, it's so interesting. You know, I guess if you believe in this sort of thing, like the Democrats and the Republicans, then it's an interesting...
Like it's a religion. It kind of is, actually.
Yeah, and also, like, you know, what's interesting, though, is I don't know anything about...
Wait a minute.
Uh-oh.
We didn't start right.
What goes on?
Cheers.
Yeah, cheers.
First things first.
Oh, that's beautiful.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. We should get a wine endorsement and start. I think the problem was we wouldn't get a wine endorsement because we'd spit it out if it tasted like shit.
Yeah, we're too honest. And you know what? We don't want to be. We would hope that our subscribers will support us at some point by having enough of them that we can monetize the channel and stuff.
Yeah.
We're doing this for the information, getting the information out and stuff that we feel is important for people.
Power to the people.
But it would be nice to like cover our costs. So
at least our ingestibles cost. So yeah, anyway, you know what's so interesting, right, is I don't know anything about Tim Walz at all because I think it's all a crock of shit. But the thing is that obviously the Democrats, when you think about Kamala Harris and Biden, Jesus, like it was like right, they were the inventors of woke, right? So they were the ones pushing this trans agenda. They were the ones pushing all this horse shit. And obviously, they at some point somebody got the numbers and said, "Looks like that's not the way to go in the next election. We need somebody that looks wholesome because
looks wholesome is the key." The same thing with J.D. Vance. He looks wholesome, just a hillbilly guy, came up just the American dream. Started poor and now he's might be vice president and stuff, but he's tied to some big money. So if you want to check that out,
yeah, we got a video.
Watch
on
our
that
video
too.
on that. So anyway, let's just start out. I got like three little clips here in the first part. We need to break them up a little bit. YouTube rules. And I forgot to let you know, Paul, that today we're going to be able to stuff.
Ooh.
Because we just gotta. What do we have? We've made 12 videos so far. We just got one taken down.
Well, you know what? I gotta say, it was entirely our fault, and the Ministry of Truth.
Because we live in a country that censors. Well,
yeah. Well, no, because the Ministry of Truth says COVID's real, and there is only one way to get it cured, and that's through taking multiple vaccines. Yep. And we were completely wrong for ever suggesting otherwise. I think they're coming.
So anyway, now if we say any of those words, now we can hit this little pink star button and
son of a... You let it go too soon.
Oh. Well, you got to press. That's why I'm teaching. I'm teaching him right now. I'm the tech.
I thought you were a DJ.
I'm the engineer here.
I get to push the button.
When you're going to say something, then you press the button. But I just realized I just pressed that really long, and it was probably really horrible for you guys if you have it turned up or you got headphones in. So we'll try to keep it right to the exact word.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, let's watch this first clip. So not only is he they had to figure out how to market Kamala too, right? Instead of the cackling witch uses word salad, they had to like change that like crazy woman into joyful. So so it's going to be the Joy and Freedom team. So let's
great.
just see also how all the talking heads get the same memo and say all the same stuff.
Words like joy.
The one thing that I will not forgive them for is their try to steal the joy from this country.
The joy felt by Americans backing the Harris-Walz ticket.
We are joyful warriors.
Being joyful is part of the American identity.
The joy factor.
Campaign of joy.
You're talking about radical joy.
It is downright joyful.
It looks like a joyous rally. It looks like a joyous occasion.
A real zeal and joy in the campaign.
The joy that you're bringing back to the country.
Joyful, exuberant rally.
Thank you for bringing back the joy.
They all got the memo.
Okay, you know what? Though, let me just bravo, right? Bravo. I mean, that whoever is running their marketing is doing a fucking great job, and I really have to hand it to them. What a good message.
Well, they got to do something because they only got like 90 days, right?
Because like, how long have we all been just? It's been a couple years, right? Of like just inundated with shit, right? From the start of COVID before
4 years now.
Just inundated with shit, and so you could almost. I'm gonna put some money on Harris to win this election because that is a great campaign strategy. Because Trump's out there talking shit. Like. I think what was so great about Trump in 2016 was like he was like, "We're the way forward. We're gonna change things. We're gonna make America great again." He had that positive statement, and now I think quite on purpose. I think quite according to script that he's talk. All he does is go talk shit about Kamala Harris and before that talk shit about Biden. And now they've just set the stage perfectly because she's going to come on and she's going to be the joy.
She's going to be the more positive one.
And everybody that's out there that is actually connected to their emotions is going to say, oh, "Wow,
that feels better.
It's a breath of fresh air."
Yeah.
But it's a script. Like you're just buying into.
And we should keep our vibration high. But it reminds me of the Obama thing, hope and change. How did that work out for us?
Oh, it's not. Worked out great for the billionaires.
I mean, Mr. Wall Street and Mr. Drone the heck out of, the Middle East.
Oof. I mean.
We want to recognize the right all people have to freedom and liberty to make choices, especially those that are about heart and home, and not have their government telling them what to do.
Wow. You can almost see the contempt on her face as she says those things. I mean,
well, and
it's
I think her handler told her to put some more energy into it because she went heart and home, Well,
yeah.
Please remember this that they're campaigning on freedom. When I get to some of the stuff about Walz and what he's done in Minnesota as governor, he is not Mr. Freedom, in my opinion. Can I say these things? He's Mr. Fraud, Mr.
Yeah.
Because I think I'm going to be able to prove in this thing. And I had no agenda. I didn't know the guy. Most people don't know the guy. I just am looking for the truth. And so I have brought you like 45 articles and every video I could watch. And I've summarized it. And hopefully we can do this in 30 minutes, although we didn't put our timer on. Whoops. Okay, so my case is he's pretty much Mr. Fraud, Mr. Anti-Parent, Mr. Anti-Free Speech, Mr. Anti-Freedom, and Mr. Anti-Baby. And yet they're promoting him as the dad image, this folksy guy, this regular guy, this fix-it guy that works on his car, his freedom guy, and this mind-your-own-business kind of guy, government leave us alone.
Well, just from that little bit of a clip that I had of him there, I mean, I think he's the perfect rehabilitation to Kamala Harris's image, right? Because everybody was just like, what the fuck is going on with why does Washington care so much about transvestites? Why is this the lead agenda?
Right.
Like, what the fuck?
Right.
Like,
and I'm going to do another segment on if we could have the issues at the top of the agenda that we wanted, what would your top 10 be? I have my top 10 list. This is another video we're going to do, and I'm going to ask Paul what his top 10 list is, and I bet they don't match what
I've only got one.
we've been getting forever. One. Okay. All right. So here's the like marketing piece on Tim Walz.
Life is as much about the lessons you learn as the lessons you teach. When I grew up, community was a way of life. My high school class was 24 people. I was related to half of them. I learned to be generous towards my neighbors, compromise without compromising my values, and work for the common good. My dad was in the Army, and with his encouragement, I joined the Army National Guard when I was 17. I served for 24 years. I used my GI benefits to go to college and become a public school teacher. I coached football and taught social studies for 20 years. And I tried to teach my students what small-town Nebraska taught me: respect, compromise, service to country. And so when I went into government, that's what I carried with me. I worked with Republicans to pass an infrastructure bill, cut taxes for working families, signed paid leave into law. I codified abortion rights after Roe got overturned. Because I go to work for the common good. But enough about me.
Sounds great.
What
great
about
pitch.
you? Yeah, sounds like a great guy,
Sign
right?
me up, man. If I believed that horse shit, then I would be in.
And actually, I'm kind of willing to give him that he might have been that before he got into politics.
Well, you know something. The thing is, like, I'm sure all that's. I'm sure it's clearly verifiably true whether he was in the National Guard. The fact that anybody's in the National Guard for 17 years,
24
years in the National Guard. I mean,
so that's okay. It's good that you brought that up. That's a good segue.
if it was really National Guard.
That's a good segue, because Vance especially is attacking him on his military record, and so I looked up what's this all about. He definitely was in the National Guard for 24 years. At least that's what the records show. He resigned right before his Iraq deployment, and so there's one of his. It was actually his superior who has got a grudge against him because before you deploy, there's a lot of training and there's a lot of like getting your team together and all that kind of stuff. And so Walz quit right before all that happened, and he went above this guy's head to another superior and kind of did it in a roundabout, and this guy thinks a little bit of a shady way. So but the big controversy here is, and hats off to anybody that, you know, feels like that's the best way to serve their country and they actually put in the time and all that kind of stuff. I think just his 24 years of service on its own is, you know, laudable. You know, I mean, I don't agree in the wars and all that kind of stuff, but you know, nobody's putting him down for his military service. What they're putting him down for is he said he was a command sergeant major, and he wasn't yet. He hadn't completed the training, so he's taking a title that he hadn't earned yet. Okay, so that's a little deceptive. Well, that is deceptive. And then he said he carried weapons of war in war. He never saw any combat. He never went to war. But he said he carried weapons of war in war. And so later on, when he got caught on that, he said, "Oh, I misspoke." You know, I mean, that's, you know.
Well, I think we all know that anybody that gets picked to be the vice president or a senator or the president it's got a really high chance of being a sociopath, right? And like the idea that like, they're all like this, they just like, I'm not sure why we as the people still think we live in a democracy when the only people that ever get to run for office, the only people we ever get to choose between are these fucking sociopaths who they don't know the truth.
At minimum, narcissists
from reality or from their own stories. They're so delusional. I was actually just talking about this today because, you know, I have a brother, and I'm not sure why. You know, like I'm not sure what is
has
his
to do
deal.
with what your parents did before you were born. No one ever explained that to you, huh?
Now I get it. But, you know, he had this personality, and I we're estranged, so I assume he probably still does. Where he would make up these just insane fucking lies, right? Just lie after lie after lie after lie. And he was a super smart guy. Like, I can remember sitting with him watching Jeopardy, and like my brother would just be like, pow, 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 pow. He just like every fucking Jeopardy question. I was always like, why don't you just go on the show, man? You're like crazy good at it. But he had that memory, I guess, that somehow he felt smarter than everybody, and he would just, but he really wasn't, you know what I mean? Like, he was sort of intelligent in this one way, but like he thought that meant that everybody just got duped by him or whatever. But he'd tell so many lies that he just, would never always, there was this like, he never let you have a conversation with anybody else that was in his inner circle, because he told all these stories about what his childhood was like and what he did for a living. And
Didn't want to get busted.
Right. So anytime you were anywhere, the rare occasion I'd get invited to his house, you know, it was always like, okay, let me get in the middle of I got to be somewhere where I can hear every single word that's being said, because I've got two.
Because my fact checker's here and I don't want people to know.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. But like, I see that same, he'd lie about, I couldn't make it over because there was so much snow on the top of the Alfred Hill, and it was too much. And then
you can't lie about the public stuff like that.
like, dude, like somebody else just drove over and is now at the house that just drove over the same hill, and they didn't even see snow. So it was always this sort of obvious thing, but it served him incredibly well in business. Sure. Right. And but at the same time, it's like, I don't know. It seems to me like we elect people with this insane fucking personality trait.
And they rise to the top of the organizations because they're willing to do anything to achieve that goal. And so whether they're a narcissist or a sociopath or a psychopath, and it's been, tracked and proven that 4% of society, people don't realize 4% of society is psychopath. So these are people who have no conscience. And so, of course, they're going to lie. And of course, they're going to cheat you. And of course, they're going to cover up stuff and whatever. And so these are the kind of people we have running governments and these agencies that have so much power these days. They might as well be almost like a government.
But still, the thing is that, I don't know. It seems like we're willfully complying and compliant in this idea that we continue to think like,
apathy
why are you still voting, right?
Yeah.
Why are you voting? Why don't you publicly tell everybody that fuck I'm going to vote?
But I disagree for this year.
For between two dickheads.
I disagree for this year, though, because one of the things I think we can count on if we get Trump is that we will have the borders closed and that we will probably not go into war and possibly stop wars. And those are super important. I mean,
he's
not perfect either. There's a really good statement that says, don't throw out the good in search of the perfect. So we're not going to get perfect as long as we have, it costs so much money to run a campaign, and not everybody can get in office. And we have a video on the Convention of States. This is probably our only hope to change what's going on in the U.S.
On a federal level.
Please watch that.
Totally right.
So anyway, I want to kind of rush through some of this first part because this last part is so heavy that we need to go into it in length. So one thing I wanted to say, when he was a congressman and I went through and looked through all of the things he voted on, there was a ton of no votes. So one of the things I'm going to be talking about too is accountability. It's like if you had a student that didn't ever show up for a test, you'd flunk that student. I think we need to flunk some of these people. He's ultra liberal. He started out kind of more Mr. Middle of the Road. In fact, he grew up in the country and stuff, and so he was kind of pro gun carrying, pro Second Amendment, and all that. The NRA supported him at first, donated $18,000 over the course of I guess
just until he got his new script, right?
Until he got his new script, and then he completely flipped. Not completely, but largely flip-flopped.
Just like Vance.
So instead of giving that $18,000 back to the NRA, he donated it to a charity. So, maybe he got a little kickback on that. I don't know. So one of the other things is, like a lot of Democrats, he's a big spender. He comes from education. He was a teacher. And so I imagine he knows that world pretty well. So my spidey senses are up when a lot of money flows through a candidate, but they don't look like they have a lot of money. Mm-hmm. So let's just put that aside for a minute. In education, he gave free. So here's the deal. I have a lady that had a really good presentation on this. Her name's Sarah Westall, sarahwestall.com and unitedforfreespeech.com. She's an independent journalist, an engineer. She built and ran companies.
We can just stick it here. I'll stick it
Yeah,
in.
we're going to put it in the show notes. Yeah. But anyway, this lady is one of my favorite researchers. She's really great, and she's got a really great heart, but she lives in Minnesota, so she's watched Walz. So one of the things she had to say was a lot of the things he did were good, like he gave like free meals K through 12. However, regardless of income, so he gave it to the rich kids too. So I don't agree with that. But he did a lot of things, and I think because he did a lot of these good things, and that's what the media is promoting, he's hidden some of these really nefarious, in my opinion, things.
But you know something I got to
there.
say, my wife, she was raised in a poor family, and I really feel for knowing the stories of her childhood.
I was raised poor too.
I'm actually really in favor of free meals for everybody because when you only give free meals to the poor kids, then absolutely everybody knows who the poor kids are. And
True.
And not that I personally don't believe there should be any shame, and I think actually that you should have. You can hold your head up high if you're poor because you probably done a whole lot less damage in the world, and I think in general you're a victim. You're in some way you are those that we wish to fight for, right? I mean, those are the ones that are there. So I like the idea that the kids don't have to deal with the. Theoretically.
Yeah, I respect that.
Yeah.
However, this point is about how much money this guy spent.
Sorry.
So free meals for everybody. He expanded special education, and I wonder how much of that was woke education. He was a big supporter of. Big spender on education, healthcare, and illegals. So the healthcare part, big supporter of Obamacare. He has paid leave for workers. This is part of one of the good ones. The moms get to stay home with the kids and/or the dads. He had a $93 million omnibus mental health budget.
That's cool.
He had a psychedelic medicine task force to address suicide among veterans. I think that's great.
It's wonderful.
$30 million for individuals in the criminal justice system. Not quite sure what that's about. Children's mental health. Protecting parents' freedom. Okay, we're going to get to that. So how much of this mental health stuff is the woke education and the transgender thing? He codified abortion rights into the state constitution. I'm all about women's rights, but when you see his abortion bill, it's going to shock the hell out of you. And then a lot of money into a gender-affirming care. I'm going to go into that and the abortion at the end, and also the pedophile protection.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Because, just at this moment, the way he sounds, actually sounds like my initial thinking is, boy, it sounds like a pretty decent guy. And he has no idea that he's about to go through 4 years of having absolutely zero power whatsoever, and that they only brought him on the ticket in order to repair, what looks like a satanic pedophilia ring. Like, how do you describe?
And my point is, he's probably a
Biden
minion for those folks.
Yeah, right. But I mean, at least
because he's doing
like,
exactly what they want.
Yeah. So there you go. Right. So,
but if you're like, if you've got a dark agenda, aren't you gonna like have a lot of like PR about the good stuff you do and just slip that other stuff in? You're not going to do it all. Of course, all bad stuff.
Of course, you can't. You can't.
There's so much marketing that goes on with all.
It's all
of this.
marketing.
It's all marketing.
And I think people look at the guy and say, oh, yeah, well, I mean, for all you know, just the point from my view is you see this thing, right? Like, remember when Trump was going on about was Obama born in the United States? Remember? And that gained tons of popularity. And the reality is, we still don't fucking know.
I still don't think
Yeah, we still don't know.
his records are in order.
How the fuck do we still not know?
Right.
Right? Like, how is that possible? How do we still
Because
not
we
know?
got the media to move us on to the next,
And then nobody does shit.
tasty
Like,
bit.
no, we still don't fucking know
Right.
whether Obama was
Right.
born in the United States. And
And
not
again,
that I'm
some-
like advocating that you should only become president if you're born in the U.S. and all this.
But that's
Like,
the
it's a
rules
different-
currently.
But that's the rules, and I think for me it's just more about the idea that we still don't fucking know.
The average Joe can't break the rules, so the politicians don't get to either, in my book.
Yeah, but these guys are just. That's what I mean. That's what I'm saying is, I think we have to just consistently look at this and think, how many years has Young and the Restless been on, right?
You love that show, don't you? It's the second time you brought it up.
Yeah, Young and the Restless, right? It's like the
I
most
don't
longest
remember
running,
it. I
but
don't-
it's the longest running soap opera in history. But that's what they tell you. But the truth, in my opinion, is no, it's the second longest running soap opera in history. The longest running soap opera in history is this fucking story that there's a real fight between the Democrats and the Republicans, and that all this shit that we watch year after year, and this idea that we have a vote, that it's just horse shit. And like what you were just talking about before, about how if Trump goes in, the border would close. And anybody who I think thinks like Jan, right, that's real, that's true. But I think, no, it's just bullshit. Doesn't matter because we don't know what the script says. So it's like if you're watching The Young and the Restless and you say, if only they'd made it to the top of the hill before the car broke down, it wouldn't have fallen. No, it was so fucking written into the script. There wasn't an option. There was no alternative. There wasn't like there was a real decision. It was just the illusion of a choice that led to the outcome that they wanted.
And I agree. There's an overall political theater, and most of these guys that make it to the top and make it even candidates for running are playing along with these same people. But as we talked about in a recent video, and I don't remember which one it was, I think there's certain factions within this whole deep state thing, and they don't always agree. And
if you get too far out of line, all of a sudden you get a bullet clip your ear.
Exactly. So anyway, so he supports open borders. He's done an executive order where the illegals get, driver's licenses.
Power to the.
And in Minnesota, you need a driver's license to vote. So this whole thing about letting millions of people across the border and then shipping them to certain states and all that kind of stuff in certain districts where they need the votes, and then in a state like Minnesota giving them driver's license, then they can vote.
But just before you go on from such an enormous point, right?
I got a lot of enormous points.
I know
That's
this might
why
be
I'm going
multiple.
fast.
Yeah, but there are too many because the DLC.
What, are you guys going to watch five? You want to watch a 5-part series?
Yeah, something like that.
I don't think they do.
Well, but
go ahead.
But I think still one little tidbit in depth, right, is of course, of course they when they were doing all those mail-in ballots and when all those immigrants were coming across the border in fucking droves. Now, does anybody remember that 2-year span where fucking aliens could just walk across the border, right? Millions and millions of them.
I think it's 10 million.
And then they fucking shipped them in buses to the places that were swing
sometimes
states.
Flights, sometimes gave them places to stay.
To
gave
swing
them a
states,
card.
right?
Yes, exactly.
I mean, yeah, so what else would we expect under the narrative? But
because they can't cheat too much without us catching them, so they got to do it like changing the election laws, and then doing things like.
But what I'm saying is, you got to be careful is to think that you are looking at that like that's what those dirty Democrats are up to, and I see it, and that makes you a Republican, and so when you decide to vote Republican, but what I think you've got to just look at one step deeper is that's what they want you to see. And so if you see that in the major press where there's aliens flooding across the borders, then They want you to think. That's another reason that they're going to give you to think that there's a difference between the Republicans and the Democrats.
But they always want you to be flip-flopping back between two parties, for sure. And we're going to make this party look good, and then that party look good, and you think you have a choice and whatever. And we don't have, like, you know, a real independent party and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I think we've talked about this before, but you know, there's books written on this shit. It's not just out of my brain. But there's this thing that happens when you've got a two-party system and you want to keep it a two-party system. If you have a two-party system and everybody maintains their static positions, like those of you watching that are old enough to remember when Republicans did the bidding of big oil, right? And then the Democrats did the bidding of big pharma before there was big tech. And then the Democrats did the bidding of big tech. And so then, you know, they were against abortion and these guys had this opinion. And they
Democrats used to be for freedom and freedom of speech and no censorship.
no
and
war.
no
Remember?
war.
Remember when we would look at the people would
Yep.
look at the Republicans 'cause at that particular moment, I viewed myself as a Green Party guy, but I definitely thought that what I was witnessing was I was more suited to Democrats because they still didn't see the big picture, which
I don't
was
like parties at all.
It's a
Why
fucking
the
dream.
fuck
It's
do
an
we have to have
illusion.
parties? Why can't we have one candidate that has these things that I like from the Democrats and these things I like from the Republicans and these things I like from the Independents? I like what this guy, his whole platform is.
I just want to say that the Ministry of Truth says that there is a legitimate two-party system that
Shame on
I'm
you.
trying to keep it real for the Ministry of Truth and stay on the air so that you can hear the whole story, not the real story, because the real story is what the Ministry of Truth says it is, but the whole story over on Rumble with our delusional thinking.
Which we haven't set up yet, but we're gonna. I think we're gonna need to. Okay,
Yeah.
moving on. I agree, and we probably need a whole episode on what you're talking about.
Yeah, probably so.
Okay.
Yeah, too much.
So he's paying for college and university for illegals, no documentation necessary. So for the regular guy and girl who have a family, you know, they've got a couple kids and two people working, and they're making a little bit over $80,000 together, they don't qualify. But the illegals get free education.
Well, you know something. I am just in general, because I guess I was raised in Ireland.
I think everybody should have free education,
Yeah,
but
free
not
education.
not the people who didn't play by the rules.
Yeah, it's hard. This illegal thing really is the one thing that I have such mixed feelings on it, because I've known, you know, we live in Ecuador, Jan and I, and in some way we are exploiting the difference between our former lives and
Well, we're helping
the
to
life.
support the economy here.
Yeah, while slowly raising it above the you know,
Yeah.
like we do contribute to the expanding cost of living for the average Ecuadorian family, and but the part that we don't have to take responsibility for, which I think gives us carte blanche to do whatever the fuck we want, is we're not a part of the ruling class, and in Ecuador and in many South American countries, there's a very entrenched ruling class, and they think about their
And a very entrenched middle class still.
yeah, thankfully to the tariffs, you know, but the ruling class still is above them, and they look down on the others. But more importantly than the fact that the ruling class looks down on the lower class is that the lower class feels inferior
Right.
to the upper class.
And that middle class looks down on us too.
Yeah.
I get the looks.
Oh yeah, yeah. You had
you
well,
up
you have to mind your manners. They don't give me such grief, but I feel like I kind of look like I might be from here. You know, like if I don't talk, people say, "Oh,
Well, I bet they look down on the lower class Ecuadorians as well, but they look down on lower class gringos,
see.
they call us.
yeah, gringos." Huh? And so I think that whole like I look at it from that perspective, and I realize there's no possible way that what they consider a lower class, not that I think they're a lower class. In fact, I think quite the opposite. I think they're very wonderful people that are really connected to their emotions, really care about their community and their family. and
Live close to the earth.
But if they had a great idea, first of all, they get a public education versus a well-funded private education. But if they did have some great idea, they're going to get it stolen by somebody of the upper class. There's no way they're going to go into a bank and say, I've got this idea, I'm going to open up blah, blah, blah. And they're going to say, oh, great, here you go. Here's the money you need. They're going to say, you don't have the references or the money.
So I think we both agree that education should be available to all, and people shouldn't have to go $100,000 into debt to get an education, all that kind of stuff. But what is the main point here is that you give it to the illegals and you don't give it to the hardworking Americans.
So true. Terrible.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Okay, I want to go through this as fast as I can because the stuff at the end is like huge. You know.
Oh, let's get there. I'll shut up. And
Okay, so during COVID, he had specific policies and actions. So Mr. Pro Freedom had a snitch line for social distancing and had patrols in the park. And they had like 100,000 people that like called in or emailed in and said, hey, these guys are playing basketball and all that kind of stuff.
people playing basketball.
So Mr. Snitch Line, he also closed businesses and schools. And there was major fraud on his watch. We're going to have 2 clips on this. Let's start with the first clip.
Ooh.
Federal prosecutors in Minneapolis today charged 47 people in what they call the largest COVID fraud case in the country. The alleged scheme involves a nonprofit organization called Feeding Our Future, whose mission was to help feed hungry kids in our community.
And saw an opportunity.
And that opportunity, according to federal prosecutors, was for the nonprofit organization Feeding Our Future and its founder, Amy Bach, to exploit the U.S. government's new rules for child nutrition programs when COVID shut down schools and sent everyone home.
As alleged in these indictments, over a short period of time, these 47 defendants engaged in a brazen scheme of staggering proportions.
Here's how it all allegedly went down. The U.S. Department of Agriculture sending money to each state to pay for those nutrition programs. The state then working with select nonprofit organizations called sponsors.
Yeah, I mean, like...
So a lot of money flowing through the state, not much oversight because it's COVID and everybody's locked down. And the thing that I found interesting too, this is, don't call me a racist, but a lot of the, if not all of the names on the list of the people who were involved, and they say like 47 people, it ended up being like 70. All of those names on those lists of people who are involved are Arabic names. There's not a Smith or a Jones to be found.
Oh, interesting.
So let's listen to the next clip, which completes this part.
Okay.
Feeding Our Future, one of those sponsors. And in 2019, it dispersed about $3.5 million to daycares and after-school programs for those meals. But by 2021, the receipts skyrocketing to more than $200 million. How'd they get it? Those new rules loosening restrictions on who can make food and eliminating the on-site visits by regulators. Feeding Our Future, thus, allegedly recruiting all kinds of restaurants and catering companies, which then submitted fake receipts and fake invoices for up to 125 million fake meals.
Well, the site visit is a really important one, right? When we're talking about this alleged scheme and reporting children that just didn't exist.
So by most counts, this was $250 million in total, 70 people, biggest fraud in the history, or in the whole COVID thing across the country.
Well, the biggest fraud that they indicted.
Right.
I mean, because we all know that up at the top, they made billions and billions of dollars, and then this is the shiny little object that they dangle in front of our face in order to say, oh, look, the federal government caught those guys. That's good. I'm glad they caught
Right,
those.
but who do they? I mean, it was under Tim Walz's watch. And are you telling me that this guy who's supposedly worth only $300,000 net worth didn't skim any of this, didn't have any friends involved in the education industry?
When he's an educator himself.
And knows that industry inside and out.
Yeah, I mean, I don't.
I don't
any
know. I'm not
expectation-
accusing him specifically,
Yeah.
but I'm just saying it's suspicious.
For sure.
Okay, so then you have the George Floyd riots that happened under his watch, and Minnesota was ground zero for the BLM riots.
He was the governor there while
Yep.
the BLM riots were going on?
Yes.
Oh,
and
very
so when
interesting.
you saw that 3rd Precinct police station burning down, that was under his watch. And so he was in charge of sending the National Guard in. You'd think he'd know a thing or two about the National Guard and have some connections in the National Guard and maybe be able to get them there quickly, but they didn't arrive until after the entire police station burned down, and then Walz blamed it on the mayor.
I mean, it's like if you, as an,
He should have blamed it on Russia, right?
Well, look, but wise old farmer that I knew, Carlton Brandis is his name. And I'm talking to him one day, and I say, "Oh, Carlton, I'm talking about the condition of the world," and I'm giving one of my rants, And I'm in my 20s. I'm very.
You don't look
passionate.
like somebody that could do a rant.
Oh, back in the day, boy.
I hear those are really big on YouTube. Maybe we should do a few rants.
A couple of roasts.
Tell us in the comments what you
Tim
think.
Ferriss is a robot. So, I was sort of going through it. He says, Paul, let me tell you something I learned in my life. He said, what do you expect from a pig but an oink?
True.
And I said, what do you mean? He says, you can talk to a pig all day long and that's just fine. But if you expect anything back besides an oink, that's on you. And my general philosophy is, of course, look at there's the evidence of why he was chosen to be the vice president, because he was an essential ingredient in the narrative.
In this whole woke
narrative.
BLM, Antifa whole thing. And remember that meanwhile, while this was happening, Harris was urging people to donate money to get these rioters out of jail. So he's letting the city burn. She's, raising money basically to get the rioters out. I mean, a lot of these people were only in jail for like 2 hours and then immediately out.
But that's not to say, just to because it's a big topic that we've never covered. But that's not to say that there isn't a very serious fucking problem with the police departments around the United States.
True.
And how often. I'm not so sure it has as much to do with race as it does have to do with class. I believe that it's much more class-based than we seem to think it. I think that there is a disproportionate number of African Americans that are poor, and that it has been
absolutely
they have been kept that way. I don't think there's any argument about that.
Right.
But at the same time, I think it does have more to do with class than it does to do with the color.
And
of
so
your
they
skin.
want to divide us by color, but really it's
class, right?
It's class.
Class warfare. That's anybody knows Martin Luther King, and the real reason he was killed. It was not because of the emancipation of rights. It was because his next mission was the Poor People's Campaign.
So, police brutality is a real thing. There's a real organic movement of black people rising up against the police, especially in the inner city and all that kind of stuff. But there's also a real thing where where it's funded, and they send people in and they, deliver, pallets of bricks, and they give them like little camps and all that kind of stuff. There's a whole funded part of these riots. And I actually tracked the money for a while. I couldn't convince anybody of anything, so I stopped, but I got up to $150,000 from corporations, especially big tech corporations and stuff that were funding these riots. And they had pristine equipment and everything they needed.
Because they're doing the bidding of the cartel. I mean, what else do you expect?
Yeah, I mean, a whole nother topic. But since that kind of stuff, and he started the defund the police movement, even though he says on camera different. So violence rose in double digits since then. Gunshot crime is up 83% now. Even CNN calls Minneapolis murderopolis, and it's destabilized the communities. And I think destabilizing the U.S. is part of this agenda.
Well, I think it goes beyond the United States. The same thing is happening in Europe, right? Where they've allowed so many immigrants to come in. And I think that the only thing that we don't quite see is that there's a very good reason that these immigrants are coming in. And as you see right now, I really think that we're looking at the very beginnings of it, which is the news these days are talking about how the Ukraine is invading Russia. And I think what we're going to see then as a response is Russia's going to launch some sort of a major attack, and they're going to officially declare World War III. And then all these immigrants that are living into all these countries, they're going to give them a path to citizenship to fight and be a part of the war. And
It is true, because it'd be hard to do the draft now, wouldn't it?
with who?
With anybody.
Bunch of fucking soft couch potatoes playing on their cell phones.
That's true.
Imagine that shit.
They actually can't do the work, actually.
Yeah, so there's, I just think we always have to look a lot further than
Right.
what gets
Big
put
picture.
in front of our eyes, because there's a story going on that's the real story, and like it seems to me like we're witnessing this across, and of course there's this interest in it. It always serves more than one interest, right? Anything that gets done fills
Yes.
the need of
Yes.
many things, and so
Yes.
it's simultaneously destabilizing family values. And remember that guy we were listening to last week, Bjorn Bull Anderson or whatever his name was?
I think there's a bromance going on between
I
you
think
and
he's
him.
a dude. He's a dude. I think he raises some great points in his
Yeah, he
last message, which is whenever you've got a huge mix of different ethnicities, people trust each other much less.
True.
And, I'm a stranger in a strange land here, but I try to culturally adopt their culture. I don't
Right.
try to push.
We learn Spanish. We don't expect them to learn English.
But I also learn manners. I also learn that when I go into a grocery store
You didn't know manners before you came here?
I didn't employ them the same way that I do.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good to know. Good to know.
Well,
glad I didn't meet you sooner.
But when would you ever go into a hardware store in the United States? Imagine going into Home Depot and saying, "Hi, random guy I don't know. How are you doing? Tell me, how is your life? What's happening with you in your life?
How are the
now?
kids?
How's
The wife?"
everybody?" And then actually listening to a 15-minute explanation.
But most places in the world expect that, except the United States.
Yeah, well, and you don't find it as often in Europe. And so, that's the thing that's going to disappear, because that same thing that I was just describing of the culture here, that's true in Norway, that's true in other
true
places.
in France.
Yeah, it's true in France.
And that's why they say the French are rude, because Americans walk up and go, "Where's the McDonald's?" And don't say, "Hi, how are you? Can you answer me a question, please?"
Right.
Minimum.
Or some,
Minimum.
yeah, cordial.
Okay, so overview of him as a governor. Broken promises. He promised to return. So Minnesota is like what Sarah Westall talks about living there. A lot of the people are from places like Sweden and Finland and Norway, and so they're very nice. It's called Minnesota nice, and they're very, they believe everything, and they believe the government's, going to do them right, and
I've been to
but they're
Minnesota.
fiscally conservative. So they had this $18 billion surplus, and he promised to return that to the taxpayers, and instead he spent it creating new programs and added another $10 billion in taxes. So the guy broke his promises to the people. He gave voting rights for felons. He gave driver's license to undocumented immigrants in 2023. He's soft on crime, just like Kamala. He legalized cannabis. I approve of that. But the lady he appointed to be head of the whole thing had to resign the next day after she was appointed by him, because she had all this dirty laundry, including selling illegal products, and had federal tax liens and judgments. Yeah. He's promoting the whole climate agenda thing, and whatever you think about that, I would love to do a segment on that sometime. We all want to take care of the planet. There's nothing wrong with that, but they're appealing to that goodness in us to use it to control us. His whole gender affirming care, he's made it a sanctuary state. And here's the question: can a 14-year-old get a surgery without the parents knowing? We're going to get to that in this part. And so follow the money. I couldn't find anything wrong with the money here, and I don't know, it just raises my suspicions. He's got all these billions of dollars flowing through him. He's got stuff, he's especially putting money into health and education, and promoting these policies that are woke and transgender. So I'm just suspicious, but I couldn't find anything, so I'm not making any accusations. Okay, so if you're ready to get to his detail on abortion. So first of all, he's defunding the things that support the pregnant moms who want to have kids. So he defunded programs to support low-income pregnant moms. He's defunded prenatal services, defunded pregnancy crisis centers, but he expanded the abortion package. And according to Sarah, who lives in that state and has been watching him carefully, this is the most severe abortion package in the entire world. There's one part of it that California is more severe on, but if you look at the whole package in general, this is the most severe in the world. Now, again, I'm all for women's rights and stuff. I don't think abortion should be used as birth control. I understand sometimes a woman gets herself in a fix and, maybe once she's got to make that decision, and it's probably a really hard decision, and I support people choosing what they want. But you're right that people use it as a form of birth control. Right. And I would love to do a segment on this too. I think there's a whole industry around the products used from abortions. I mean, cosmetics, all that, all fetal stuff. There's even fetal cells in some of the vaccines.
Nice.
We're going to have to get used to this. Okay, so let's talk about how severe this is. So the anytime I'm going to get back to. You can have an abortion for any reason, under any circumstance. It's not necessary that even a doctor performs it. And they eliminate the tracking of it and the reporting of it as to the practices used and any injuries and deaths. So there's not going to be any record of this. The any time you can have an abortion any time, even the same day the baby is born alive. They can let that baby die. It's born alive. They can let that baby die and call it an abortion.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's funded. It's funded. Taxpayers are paying for this. So only on this one point is California worse. I was shocked. California, it's okay to let the baby die up to 28 days after birth and no investigation. I mean,
it's hard to imagine.
The whole euphemistic way of calling all this stuff, like the Patriot Act and this gender-affirming care and da-da-da, and call it an abortion when it's a live baby, almost a month old.
But I just want to interject my 2 cents here. Because, I personally don't believe in abortion. And after having 4 children, I'm
you love your kids.
So glad I didn't.
Yeah.
No matter what I thought when I was a 20-year-old. And so there's that part of me, that doesn't want to see any child die, of course. But whenever I'm listening to a government make a position that emotionally triggers me, the very next thing I say to myself is, Paul, you better take a step fucking back, man, because they're throwing a hook out trying to get you right now, and it looks like you're taking the bait. And so I pull myself back and I say, okay, what's going on here? And much like I think
they're not trying to get you to take the bait. This is unknown. Most people don't know about this. It's hidden.
Oh no, I don't think that's true at all. I think that
most Minnesotans don't know about it. And Sarah says when she tries to tell people this, they look at her and they don't believe it. And even when she shows them the legislation, and I read through the legislation, they don't believe it.
Oh, I believe that for Minnesotans. But what I'm saying is, you can bet your ass that the Republican Party is going to be up on this stuff. They're going to be up one side of it and down the other before this campaign. I
haven't seen them do it yet, but they
will. Of course, they're going to save the best for last, and you keep your
save it for the debates, I suppose.
And you're right before the election. You hit them with that stuff that is going to take some people out.